Hi everybody, we're continuing again with chapter 31.6, and this is the result consecutive clauses section. This is on page 217 of Shelmerdine's text. So what we're dealing with here are clauses of result, and kind of in earlier times these used to be called consecutive clauses. You don't really need to know that. Let's focus on the result. So we want to make a distinction between two types of results. Actual result, which we'll discuss just now, which actually happens, and a different kind of result, a more natural result, or we might consider it a general result, which is less indicative. But we'll get there when we get there. So because this actually happens, we're going to be dealing with the indicative mood. And before we even get to the Greek, let's talk about some of these examples in English. She was a good person, so she helped the old man cross the street. So the idea of the result here that we're getting at is contained in this English word so. That's kind of saying that because of part one of the sentence, part two happened as a result. That's exactly what we're talking about here. She was a good person, so she helped the old man across the street. What we're assuming here is that if she wasn't a good person, if she weren't a good person, she would not have done it. It was because she's a good person that the result happened. So we can see that there are certain similarities, and we don't want to push too strongly on this. There are certain similarities with if clauses. I mean, if then, right? We've got a part A, a protasis, followed by part B, an apodosis. And then this is saying, well, there's not an if. We're not being hypothetical. And here in this situation, we're actually being quite actual. We're saying that one thing happens because of another. There's a sense of entailment that's similar to these if clauses, but different. Now we're calling them result, and the key word here is so. Or sometimes the word could be that, or sometimes we're going to have no word at all. That's what we've got here. He was so tired, he slept through both alarms. So English speakers know that you could put that in there. He was so tired that he slept through both alarms. But again, we've got part one, the cause, and part two, the result. So tired that he slept through both alarms. So we're seeing again results, and we're talking about things that actually happened as we're phrasing them. She was having such a good time that she forgot the meeting. So we again have this notion that there's part one that results in part two. So we've got some different levels of looking exclusively at part ones, which we're going to divide right there. Here we've just got a bald statement. She was a good person. Here we've got something that's been intensified. And that it's not just that he was tired, he was so tired that he slept through both alarms. The same sort of thing will happen in Greek, we'll see. And such a good, that's another way of kind of saying so. We're intensifying. We're saying there's some degree to which, and we could think of a kind of chart here, that below this level, from y equals 2 downwards, nothing's going to happen. But once we get to this other kind of higher zone where y is greater than 2, then something happens. So if he was only 2 degrees tired, he would have woken up. But because he was so tired, he kept sleeping through the alarms. This is the kind of result we're talking about, some degree to which these things might happen. So these are all actual results, as we're calling them, because they actually happened as we're phrasing them. This will be compared now to what the linguists like to call a natural result. So let's look at these sentences and try to come up with a difference. He was tired enough to sleep through a tornado. So what we're saying here is we've got part one, tired enough, and again, that's kind of, again, we want to think about that chart and say, well, that's the threshold. And he was above that, and that he would have slept through a tornado if it happened, but it didn't happen. That's the kind of natural, it's natural, but it's almost hypothetical. It's not actual, it's kind of imagined. He was tired enough to sleep through a tornado. I was so foolish as to believe them, but I didn't. Or, we could say here, We're not committing to the fact that I believe them. We're just saying foolish, again, to such a degree beyond which the belief might have happened. But I was too smart to be tricked again. So we're saying, again, maybe he wasn't tricked, or I wasn't tricked, but the notion is that, well, the tricking could happen, and I prevented that by being too smart. Again, we're getting the sense of there's some sort of threshold that's being crossed, which has a result. All right. So I think that does a good job separating our actual results that actually happen and our natural results, which can be fairly similar, and in certain contexts, these could be actual results, at least down here. But they don't need to be. That's the kind of point. That's what Shelmerdine doesn't make that point too clearly. That's what I want to get across, is that actual results actually happen. Natural results might actually happen, but there's, in the context of the sentence or the discourse, it's not clear that they did. So when we have, I said active here, what I meant to say is actual. When we have an actual result, we're going to use the conjunction hoste. This is our so, or so that, in, or so as to, so that, so as to. That's what a hoste is going to mean. It's going to take the indicative. So we're going to have hoste, let's say, lues, tus, hippus. Just to have a kind of result clause here, such that, so that, so as to, so that you freed the horses. Or, alternatively, it was storming so loud, so badly that you did not free, or you are not freeing the horses. It's so rainy outside. That's exactly what we're talking about, an actual result. A natural result, we're going to take not a subjunctive, as you might have been guessing when we're talking about a non-indicative, but actually an infinitive, and with the negative of may, because it's a little bit stronger. So it is raining so hard that, and this is not saying that you're doing this, that you naturally would not free the horses. So here we would have luein tus hippus. Now, good, that's all fine, but you're going to say, Al, we've got an infinitive acting as a verb here. What are we going to put in as the subject of the infinitive? I say, well, that's a great question. Random student online. We've got two options here. If we have a main subject that's also the subject of lue, so you are so good, so you are so, huto is the word that we're going to be seeing for that a lot. Oh, we don't want to make it you. Let's make it third person. So again, we don't want Sue. We want to make it, let's make it ho Socrates. So Socrates is so good, agathos, that he frees the horses. That would be the exact way we do it. We won't need to put anything in there. But if we're saying that Demosthenes was, or Socrates was so persuasive that Plato freed the horses, then we'd want this to be accusative. I explained this terribly. What we need to ask for the subject of the infinitive is it the subject of the main clause? If yes, then we don't need to express anything. It's already kind of implied. If no, then we're going to use an accusative. accusative, subject, and the infinitive, just like we've seen in indirect statement. Lastly, there's a certain type of natural result that happens with a comparative adjective. Note that we were saying back here, we'd be meeting thresholds and using words like enough, so, or to that would trigger these things. Well, what if we said, I was more tired than you, with the result that I fell asleep? That's where we would use hey, I was more tired than you falling asleep, something like that. We'll see this more in the exercises. So huto takea ein he naus ekene hoste, and that's our key, let me, we know what to think about that now, lethenai hupoton person. For these two examples, I chose Persian 8 sentences. Sorry, this is not 1 and 2, but rather 1 and 3 from exercise 137. So swift was the ship. So, and not just the ship, but that ship. So that ship was so fast that, and now we get to our result clause, and we see, may plus that's an infinitive. We know clearly we're saying, yes, this is going to be a natural result. And then lethenai, little trick there. What verb is that coming from? It's a little bit hard to remember. Lambano. And then what principal part is that? That should be your dead giveaway. Principal part 6, aorist passive, with an aorist passive infinitive ending. And that's exactly what we're expecting here. So the ship was so fast that it was not captured. So was, because we're aorist. It, because we're repeating the subject, hey nows, and we don't have anything given here. We don't have any accusative. We're just leaving it out. That's exactly what we expected to see from here. Is it the subject of the main clause? And the answer is yes. So we have empty set. We don't use anything there. So the ship was so fast that it was not captured. And then here we have our genitive of agent by the Persians. Great. So our result clause here is a natural result. Using the word hoste as our conjunction, may plus the infinitive, showing that we're in a natural state. If this could have been an actual. I mean, if we're talking about Artemisia's ship or something like this, it was so fast with the result that at that time, in that circumstance, it was not taken by the Persians. But here this is saying, so as to not be captured by Persians. So maybe that would be a slightly better way to express this. That ship was so fast, so as not to be captured. That would be another way of doing this. So as not to be captured by the Persians. General, natural result. Tosutoi esan hoi persai, hosta hoi athenaioi uketi emenon ente pole. Got ahead of myself there. So the Persians, that's going to be our subject, they deserve to be capitalized. The Persians were of such, and what's tosutos? Such number, such size. So maybe we would say here, so numerous. We're so numerous, so many, that the Athenians, not yet, no longer, emenon, remember this is coming from our verb meno, and that this is its aorist form, so the Athenians did not remain, or stay, rather, let's do stay, in the city, and we still need to do something with that uketi. Let's do no longer. So let's make this a simple past. That the Athenians no longer stayed in the city. That's how numerous the Persians were, how great they were in their size and number. All right, hopefully that will get us started. We'll actually get to the full exercises, a few more of them in the next video. See you then.